Hello there! I really hope you're not expecting a joke now. Sorry, but Miniac already did all the good jokes about Freehand. Go watch his video. Hello fellow Heroes of the Blue, and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to another painting video. And in this painting video, I'll be showing you how I approach painting freehand and how you can use decals and make them look exactly like freehand very easily. So let's get cracking. So we have our two banners here, and as you can see, I'm not using contrast paints to base coat them because this is not the tool for the job. When you're doing freehand, you want a solid color, then you can just go back to correct. And in this case, I'm using just pure black and Contour blue, one for the blue banner obviously, and one for the black banner. And I'm going to do freehand on this side, and on this other side, I'm going to use decals and try to get the same effect and see how they compare. So we are going to start with the freehand side, and for this I have two colors here that I'm going to use to sketch. One is Ulthuan Grey and the other is Aberland Sunset. So my first approach when I'm doing freehand, especially in these flat surfaces, is to establish the right proportions before we start doing any drawings. And since this is a rectangle, I'm going to start blocking in the middle bits. This doesn't have to be precise at all, just sketch. I'm trying to establish the middle point here so we have a nice reference to use. The key is also using very thin down paints. For example, this is the Contour blue that I'm going to use to correct. As you can see, quite thin and nice. Now that I have this center correctly placed, I can start patterning what I have to do. So we have to do one line here at the top. I don't know how wide I'm going to do this, but more or less like this. Again, don't worry, this doesn't have to be perfect. The key is we are going to go back and forth with our blue and with our black in the other one to correct stuff. And now I'm going to start patterning the Yanden symbol. So again, it's very simple in starting with the top flat surface. And you can also see that I prefer to do this before I do my highlights on the blue, just because I'm going to mess up so much that not having to deal with that is going to be better for me. Again, using the decals as reference for the size and proportions of the logo. Also, I'm going to put some lines here, so I'm making sure that the logo is the same width all around. That kind of stuff I think is very important. And again, don't stress out, this is just an initial sketch. We are going to work over this and cover any mistakes or any imperfections later on. The most important thing is we're making sure our sketch is nice, symmetrical. I know I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record, but this is not about doing it in the first go. No one does it in the first go. This is about learning how to sketch things and correct as you go. And because we're going to do so many passes, the paint needs to be super thin because it can build up very quickly and leave very ugly textures. Once we have our initial sketch more or less ready, it's time to fill in the lines basically. And remember, we're going to correct back later on, so don't be too fussy about if the lines are not straight or perfect. That stuff is not important. The key here is just to fill the lines with the colors and make it solid and nice. And now it's time to correct. You see, it's a bit super messy, but this is the back and forth game that we have to play. So we're going back to our base color. This is why it's very important that our base color is just a color that we can just use instead of a contrast, which is a transparent color over other color. That doesn't work very well. So we go and we trim down everything to make it uniform and nice. And there's a possibility that we need to go back again and keep on trimming, keep on cleaning. That's all part of the game and is to be expected. Here, to trim the center line, which needs to be thinner in the middle, I'm just going to go over the white, just so I can make sure that this line is perfect. And then I will just go over with the white and fill it in again. So yeah, sort of doing one step back to do two steps forward. So I kept on correcting until I was happy with it, and now I have to paint the flames. And this is a deceptively difficult shape to nail down, but I'm going to try and do it. I'm going with Aberland Sunset here. So that is pretty much what I wanted, and I'm just going to refine a little bit more with the blue, and we will move on to the other banner to keep on working with our freehands. As you can see, I already have the other banner with the white stripes painted, just because, well, it makes everything easier. And before I start with the oval symbol, I'm going to paint the tiger stripes. Again, not really caring about cleanliness now at this stage. This is just about more or less creating an initial sketch, seeing if I like the composition, all of that stuff. Again, don't be afraid to. It's not about being afraid really, it's just that you don't have any other options, but to go back with your base coat color and just trim down, clean up until you are happy with it. So it's now time to paint the oval with the eye symbol that he has on the tiger stripe banner, and for this I'm going to copy another decal. This is the decal that I'm going to use for the actual decal side of the banners, so I'm going to measure it so I'm sure I'm making it the right size. So it's about 1 centimeter by 7 millimeters. Sorry, my freedom unit friends. So our first step, now that I have our striping here very much defined, is to going back to our balance sunset and tracing the middle line. Again, 1 step back to do 2 steps forwards kind of thing. I'm going to put a marker on the very top. That's what I want my oval to start. And now I'm going to measure. Yeah, look at that. Pretty much spot on. So yeah, that's 1 centimeter. And I'm going to take the middle there. And I can't see it, so I'm going to use Ruthwan Gray, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to see what I'm doing here. And now, just for the sake of seeing what I'm doing, I'm going to trace that with Ruthwan Gray. This is just a quick montage of me painting the runes on the bottom of the banner. It's just really more of the same, but it felt like a missed opportunity not including at least some footage of that, since I had it in the camera. For this really small details, it's just a matter of going very, very slowly, just using the very tip of the brush and use magnification to see better what you are doing. It's very important that you practice to use just the very tip of the brush. Is one of the better skills that you can get, and once you manage to get used to it, it's really, really useful. So with the oval now defined, it's time to paint the symbol. That will be the last freehand we will have to do. I'm going to use Ruthwan Gray to define it first, just because it's easier to clean over the yellow than the black, so just to make the main structure of the symbol. I'm just going to trace it now with black, now that we have a clear outline that we can follow. As you can see, it's much easier to work with a previous sketch done than trying to make this sketch with black and then having a harder time to clean it up with the yellow. So using the Ruthwan Gray as a sketch color is perfect over yellow. And just because you're going to ask, I'm using the same brush for everything, as I usually do. This is my Rosemary & Co. Series 33, size 3. Don't need a ridiculous small brush to do this kind of work. In fact, I think it's easier done with a large brush. So with that cleaned up and done, our freehand part is finished. We now have to highlight and shade everything. But before we do that, I'm going to go with the decals. So it's decal time now, and I have my 3 decals here that I'm going to apply. I have my microsol and microset ready to do the softening. These bottles are ancient, by the way, they are like 20 years old. They still work fine. Fantastic product to buy. And I'm going to soften my decals so I can apply them. And for this, I'm going to use my wet palette. I'm just going to drop a little bit of water into there, and I'm going to put my decals there with the water on the back. This is, to me, the best way to soften decals. Let them soak for a little bit there, and I have an old brush to move them around onto the Mini. I'm going to put some micro set where I want to put my decals. Right there. So I can take my decal now, move it with the brush so it's out, a bit more micro set, and we should be able to just move the decal around to where we want it. Just nudge it on the edge of the decal to move it around and place it where you want it. This is going to be a little bit more tricky, but you can push it down there and it's going to be fine. And now it's time for the micro sole. But first we need to dry this. And I like to use these cotton earbuds. I just roll them on top of the surface to press the decal down. And now I'm going to apply micro sole. And this is the softener. This will soften the decal and make it conform perfectly to the surface. You need to leave this to fully cure. And once you apply this, you don't have to touch your decals, because if you do, you run the risk of destroying them. So everything is dry now, and now I'm going to apply a varnish to unify the finish, because, well, you can see the decals are very shiny. So what I like to use is a mix of ultramatte varnish and satin varnish. This is 1 part ultramatte or 1 part satin. Works really well for me. You can use ultramatte if you want, but for some applications I just prefer a little bit of shine. So all the freehand and all the decals are done, and we are going to start shading the decals, the yellow ones that is, by using Raglan flex shade. And using Raglan flex shade because I can put it over the decal or the black parts of the decal and it's not going to affect it. The black is not going to turn any other color, and I can shade the yellow pretty easily. And I will do several layers of this to build up the shading as I've been doing on the other symbol. But for the tiger stripes, instead of using Raglan flesh shade, it will desaturate it a bit too much. I'm going to saturate them a little bit using Iyanden yellow. While that dries, for the white bits, I'm going to use Fenrisian grey, which I'm going to turn into a glaze, and glaze some shading into the white and the Ulthuan grey. And as you can see, we are starting to integrate the decals and the freehand together, but also both things into the general miniature. This part here is very tricky, so you will have to just go with the Fenrisian grey very carefully and apply it around the letters. There's no way around that. The general shading on the eye I am pretty happy with, and now I'm going to apply Flaskit's yellow to regain some of those highlights and do some extra highlights. For example, I'm going to make a highlight around the symbol, as well as smoothing out some of the highlights. Flaskit's yellow is basically the same color that was there previously. And also with Flaskit's yellow, I'm going to highlight the tiger stripes. The Flaskit's yellow is very transparent, so that's going to work in our favor. And I'm going to apply layers of this. And here you do have to be very careful, of course. You need to do some adjustments later with the black. Do it. It's not that difficult. And of course I'm doing exactly the same steps on the freehand side. And I hope you can see that both sides are coming together and looking very, very similar. Now with all the highlighting done, you can see, well, there is a slight difference between the yellow from the decal and the yellow from the stripes, but it's not really that much. At least it's not for me. And I'm pretty happy. It looks proper. Same for this side, and now I'm going to highlight it. And for this I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Dawn Yellow and Flaskit's yellow first. And finally moving into pure Dawn Yellow for the very final highlights. And for the white details I'm just going to use white. And here in the symbol I'm going to kind of do an edge highlight on the outer perimeter, just so it looks more like the original model which was sculpted. And now I'm going to highlight and shade the cloth underneath it. And to shade the blue, because I'm not going to shade the black, I'm going to use Leviathan blue. And I'm going to go with a layer and feather, just because it's faster. And of course being very careful around the freehand. And to highlight it, I'm going to go with mixing Tempered blue into Contour blue. This is about 1-to-1, and just going to do an edge highlight with this. You can always glaze it a little bit into some of the highlights. For the next highlight, I'm going to go to Pure Temper Card Blue. Again, same thin edge highlight, but concentrating it towards the parts where we have highlights, basically. And to finish off the blue, just a small highlight of Baharth blue in the corners and stuff like that. With the blue highlights, then I'm going to move into the black ones, and these are much easier because I'm just going to do an edge highlight. And I'm going to do a thick edge highlight with Corvus black. And with the Corvus black highlight done, I'm going to move into a Mechanicus Standard Grey. And just very carefully edge highlighting this, stopping where I meet the yellow. And with that highlight done, I'm going to move into the last one for the banners, and this will be Administratum Grey. So I'm going to do a very thin edge highlight. And with that last step done, Iriel is completely finished and we have our two lovely banners all done and looking amazing. And I really hope this video helps you out when you get to paint freehand, or if you choose the decal route, how to make your decals look amazing. So as I said guys, I really hope you liked this video and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye! Do you like my videos and want to help me make them? Well, there are several ways you can do that. You can follow me on social media. You have the links to all my social media in the description below. You can also check all my affiliate links in the pinned comment of this video. Use those links in your next hobby purchase and help me without any additional cost to you. But most importantly, there is Patreon and channel members. You have the link to my Patreon in the description below and in the pinned comment of the video. Or if you prefer it, you can just click the join button below this video. Patreon and channel members help me do all the cool projects that I want to make and help me improve the quality of my videos. Don't be afraid, no content will ever be hidden behind a paywall, but it's a nice way to help me and you will get something back for your generosity. As I said guys, thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you to Heather Amster, Nicholas Furnell, Brian Bledsoe, Greengar, LMAP Limited, Tyrannosaur, Carlos Rivera, Chris Goldenthal, Christoph Moret, Gaining Wheat, Javi Mota, Kim Anderson, Michael Boye, Robert Smith, Thomas Ustergaard, Tom Brand, Victor Domen, Dark Avok, Aaron Dell, Charles Armintas, Chris Fivey, Kieran Murtha, Chris Talios, Dan Mako, Darcy Farrar, David Sutherland, Dr. V, Gareth Smith, Geoffrey Tell, G-Force, Green Rollins, Howard Houtville, Jack Scouten, Jamie Milligan, Jim Kennan, Josh Simpson, JT Butler, Kevin Mian, Kevin Sulas, Leonard Lindemann, Liam Clancy, Mark Jarvis, MCJ, Natius Maximus, Nick DeMao, Oscar Jonathan Thomberg, Paul Blunt, Royal Nilsson, Samuel Sasha Park, Stephanie All, and Tasted for being the coolest persons in the planet. Be like these fine folks on my Patreon and take control.